already talking, so I'm just going to say good morning to everybody. Hi, is it still the morning? Even I logged on at 11 o'clock and it's now 11:46. So hi everyone. I just wanted to have a chat with Eve about Bandcamp versus Spotify, and I haven't even told Eve why. So I find that people get very heated about this sort of topic. And on my social media, probably, I don't know, maybe half a dozen times a week, I'll get somebody really, really angry about Spotify links. Like, I don't use Spotify. I'll never use Spotify. And it's like, I'm a hippie, each to their own. You do you, whatever works for you. But I find that it's actually quite an inflammatory subject. And how people are consuming music is a really it's just a really inflammatory subject. And my position as an artist, I don't think it would be much of a secret to anybody that because of all the obvious reasons that Spotify streams pay so little to artists and all that kind of thing, I haven't really been interested in it before now. And I haven't put I haven't put very much effort or energy or promotional resources or anything into pursuing Spotify before now. My feelings about it changed relatively recently because for I suppose I should say really because I don't really want to make CDs anymore because of the carbon footprint. So I don't want to offend anybody. I know there are plenty of people out there I'm all for making things that people are actually going to use. But I think for a long time as indie artists, we've been advised to make CDs because people will buy them even if they don't use them. And that just doesn't sit with me, where in like every other area of my life, I'm trying to reduce my carbon footprint. I'm trying to do everything I can to reduce the amount of plastic. And but it's almost like, but if you're going to pay me a tenner, I'll do it. So it was that tipped me over to, I really need to explore this streaming, this streaming income more. And it is one hell of a mountain to climb. I've been on Bandcamp for a long time, and I really fell in love with Bandcamp during the pandemic. I think they have done more to help indie artists in the last 3 years than anyone else that I can see. They with their Bandcamp Friday that they still do every month, everybody who buys on that day, Bandcamp give up their commission. So and that has translated into I believe millions of dollars going straight into the pockets that otherwise would have gone to Bandcamp. So that's kind of where I'm at, and I feel as an artist that I don't really have, I'm happy, people to, like I say, consume music however they like. And as an artist, what I feel is that they are two very, very different audiences. And you've got your Bandcamp audience and you've got your Spotify audience, and I want to serve them both. Is where I'm coming from. Like, and I'm thinking about, I'm not thinking about the platform. I'm thinking about the person that's listening to the music when I have that in mind. Some people I've spoken to have been, and even the people are sort of, people who run magazines, and some people have got really, really heated about Spotify, and I completely understand that. And just as a side point, I have the Venn diagram of the people. Some people use Bandcamp, some people use Spotify, some people use Apple Music, there are, and all of these other streaming platforms. And I think there's quite a lot of all of this is just my experience. Like, the people who use Bandcamp, they do it because they know that I'm getting more money and it's going straight to me, and that they do that consciously because they want to support me as an artist. And I love that. The reality is that for every person who buys something on Bandcamp, it's the equivalent of something like 700 streams, or more than that. Yeah. What is actually best for artists in terms of sort of promotional income and all of that is like, you know, buy it on Bandcamp, buy it on Bandcamp, and then when you listen to it, listen on Spotify, because then you're getting more streams. But I don't want to ask people to do that. I have the tip of the iceberg of my listeners who do that, which is amazing. But that's not a model to pursue. And I just wanted to, you know, I know that, you know, you and I have known each other for a long time, and we've, you know, since the MySpace days, we've gone through all of the, well, now this is happening, and now this is happening, and like, what's this iTunes thing? And you remember when that was new?
Yes, I remember that was new, and
people wouldn't pay for downloads, and now it's like, yeah,
you were able to make like playlists on it, and there's basically, I think when it comes to streaming services, there's going to be an issue of like your own personal values as well as what's good for your business. Like your values around the environment mean that Bandcamp, you know, it is a great way of getting people listening to your music where you're not having to like post physical products. And I think Bandcamp is great for people who really want to support you, who already know something about your music, whereas Spotify, it's like to be discovered by new people. You do need to be on Spotify. Now, as you're aware, because you produced the track in question, I had a track a couple of years ago that was in the running for the Northern Ireland Music Prize, which was a Spotify playlist, because music industry professionals listen to music on Spotify. And because there have been some like fake streams on this track somewhere in the world, which wasn't actually initiated by me, Spotify summarily removed the track. And if I relisted it through a distributor, then I would have lost the whole of my Spotify account. So this led me to be sort of in bad standing with Spotify, which was a really bad thing. The only way of getting the track back up was to remix it and make it a bit of a different track, which we did. And I liked the finished product, but that happening made me feel like my music wasn't particularly safe on Spotify, that something could go wrong and it would be taken down. And so I for a while referred to them as Spitify and got quite cross about this. But if you're not on Spotify is not so much about sales. It's almost like a radio station. It's like you're hoping that people will be playing playlists and that your track will be included in playlists, or, you know, when it randomly selects things that it thinks you're going to like. Like I have definitely discovered new artists that way. But the downside of it is that it is causing people to devalue music. Because, you know, my hairdresser said to me at one point she would never think of paying for music, because if you can just stream it for free on services like Spotify, where you can basically get anything, then why would you? It's also impacting the way that music is created. For example, people will skip past a track quite quickly if it has a long introduction. So now you're advised, oh, just go straight into the tune. So that sort of impacts the way music sounds. And, you know, I had one friend who's had, well, last time I looked, she'd had 57 million streams of one song on Spotify. Now, back in the days when it only had 25 million streams, I had a chat to her about it, and she said, well, people only listen to this one track because it's on a major playlist. They don't then listen to the rest of her catalogue. Whereas on Bandcamp, people will become interested in you and your catalogue and what you're doing. Like Bandcamp offer that great, you know, the VIP group where people who really like your stuff can pay a very small monthly subscription, which you as an artist set yourself. And for that, they get exclusive content and videos and things. And, you know, that's the people who are really your bread and butter, who are really supporting you in your work. You won't get that on Spotify. You have very little information on Spotify about who the people are. Who are listening to your music. And for this reason, I'm going to throw like another service into the works. I prefer YouTube. Its pay is actually even worse than Spotify's, but people can leave comments. The stats are really good. You can see what parts of the world your music is doing best in, the kind of age ranges. Those things you can see on Spotify as well, but not quite as in depth. And I feel that you can have like a community on YouTube. You can have your community tab on YouTube so that you can like directly chat with your followers. Like, to me, it's what works for me. But I have noticed when you go to songwriting camps or you're involved in kind of industry things, your number of monthly listeners on Spotify is now seen as your mark of success, like how popular you are. And I, like yourself, I didn't trust Spotify after that track was taken down, so I wasn't going to push people in that direction. Although on my website, I do use a Spotify player for people to stream tracks, and because you might as well send everyone who wants to listen to the one place and have those numbers all in the one place. But
Yeah.
there are definite pros and cons. The money thing is ridiculous. And this is why in the US at the moment, there is a committee looking into the pay to songwriters and to artists via streaming services. That's something that the UK Parliament actually had a select committee look at, because
Yeah.
there was a horrifying story in Rolling Stone recently of a songwriter who got a track onto an artist by a very, very prolific major label artist who made a grand total of $4,000, which, as she said, was hobbyist money rather than something you could live off of. But when you think of what it would have cost to travel and to invest in the equipment and instruments and everything that would have gone into writing that song for this artist, the remuneration is just too low. It means that people can't realistically go into songwriting as a living. They've got to have other things on the side. And streaming services have been a big part of that happening, which is a decided downside. But yet, if you don't put your music up onto Spotify, Amazon, Apple Music, how's anybody going to discover you in the first place? So you're in this kind of catch-22 situation.
Yeah, and I think this is what I'm, what I'm realizing now is that actually the Spotify stats and all of that are for other industry, other industry people look at you and they look at your Spotify stats. But for a long time I've, ever since, basically people stopped buying CDs, it's made me think about, so what is the value actually in what we do? Because I know there is something that people cannot live without artists in the world. And we're always, and I don't want to turn this into how much would you pay a plumber and all of that. I'm like really sick of that conversation, but there is something deeply valuable about what we bring. And how that is monetized has changed since, since Tudor times, how that is monetized evolves. And for a long time it's been, it became about the live experience. But I think particularly during the pandemic, it made me realize that my role, and this is just like my identity as an artist, the value that I bring is about bringing people together. And it's like, bringing people together through music, building relationships, people being seen, people being having an expression, people having an identity, and coming together. And we have a great time in the gigs, but there's loads of other things that I just posted. I get so many amazing DMs on Twitter every single day. And I just posted some of them to my Instagram story yesterday, because it's like, to show the value of, this is a connection that we make with people with what is essentially just clicking a button on your phone. So it's made me think more about it in terms of services. So I've got a Patreon now, and I have, and it's not just about buying the MP3s. It's about how you how you give that experience to people. And I think that's what I do with everything that I do in music, is about bringing people together and giving them an outlet for whatever it is. But the thing with Spotify is that if a lot of people are consuming on Spotify, it makes it very difficult, like you say, it makes it very difficult to follow up with those people. And I think there's even things like, I heard there's a band called the 502s, who I know from TikTok actually, and they're just like a brilliant bouncy Americana, always happy kind of band, but in a very positive way, not in a sort of toxic positivity sort of way. And they were saying that one of their songs went viral, and they I'm not even sure I should be saying this now. They to try and capture some of the traffic, they used their band banner and put a text number. I don't think it's there anymore. They put a text number up and say, text us, and so that they could just start some conversation and start making a connection with those people who are becoming fans. That's another word I hate, but with their music fans of the moment. So it does make it very difficult to kind of to know what to do, really. But with with Bandcamp, I think the people that get there have a much higher value experience.
Yeah.
But it's much more difficult on the front end. Like, you have to educate them because Spotify is a household name, and everybody knows what it is. You know, the vast majority of people who go to my Bandcamp are there because I've sent them there, not because they knew me first and then they went there.
Well, like, I listen to music on Spotify, even though I've pointed out that it has some drawbacks, because I can integrate it with my Echo devices, which means I can listen to music in the house, in the car. Like, it's just technologically, it's easy. And then as a songwriter, I want to follow playlists such as the Billboard 100 so that I can follow commercial trends. And so that I feel like I have to have some association with Spotify. Bandcamp, technologically, I've never tried playing Bandcamp tracks off of ALEXA. Don't want to accidentally have her respond, because that would be embarrassing. So, you know, it's like the technology of it makes it so easy and so accessible. And but then what is easily accessible, either for free or for a very low cost per month, people don't really totally value. There is an interesting aspect in what you're saying, though. When it comes to music, Spotify is about whether or not people actually like the song, but following an artist is often more about the message and the ethos and like finding a tribe. You know, music has that big dimension to it, and like Bandcamp actually is constructed to help you build that sense of community, because having one person listen who's really engaged and actually interested is probably better than having 100 people listening and okay, because they're just doing the hoovering or they're in the car and they're not really paying attention. It's like, I think you get like higher quality traffic on Bandcamp, definitely. And that is definitely worth it. And it's just like, if your goal was to get signed to a label, then maybe you'd be better pushing Spotify because you want to be able to show a label, here are my stats, here are my monthly listeners, blah, blah, blah. If you don't want to do that and you want to be independent and you want to be your own label, then maybe Bandcamp is going to offer you the ability to grow more significant relationships with your audience, which may be better. And as I say, I like YouTube for that as well.
Yeah.
So, like, it depends on your own values and your own business, and like, what are you actually hoping to achieve? Nothing really replaces live gigging, but then live gigging has been impacted by Spotify, because if there's no money in actually selling recordings, then you've got to go out and play. And then, of course, we're seeing ticket prices like go through the roof. And, you know, there's sort of been an impact, because artists have to look at, well, where can we actually make money? Because whilst it's like the vulgarities of money and it's not all about that, we do have to be able to live and pay our bills. And you can't invest like a huge number of hours of your week into something that's not going to pay. I mean, a really reasonable price for producing a song might be £300, say, considerably more if you've got a lot of live musicians and session musicians who need that kind of thing. So you would need really kind of to be getting into the millions of streams to start to break even on what it would cost to record an album. And then the art of the album, oh, don't get me started on that. Because when you release music on Spotify, you can only submit one track per recording for editorial playlists. So people are more likely to release a song every month for a year so that they can pitch all 12 of those songs than a collection of 12 songs. And that means the album as an art form is starting slightly to be lost, which is a bit scary to me. So
yeah, there's all sorts of impacts onto everything, isn't there? And I think, you know, so I suppose, I came to this conversation because, like I say, it seems to be a really heated debate amongst the consumers of music, and my main concern is about my relationship with my listeners, and that's what I care about more than anything else. And Twitter's my biggest platform. I've been on it for over 10 years, and it's a beast. It's an absolute beast. So I have a lot of conversations with people on Twitter. And one of the things that I do quite early in the conversation is, which I've started doing recently since I had this change of heart about CDs, is I send them a Spotify link. So that fairly early on, like, you know what I'm about. I'm here to talk about music, and and yeah, like I say, I get maybe half a dozen a week. I just get this massive sort of there's some really quite strong negative feelings about Spotify, and I suppose I wanted to have this conversation publicly, just to put it out there for we're live on Twitter at the moment. We're live on Twitter and YouTube and Facebook. By the way, if you want to have a chat, if you comment on Facebook or YouTube, Eve and I will see the comments. So thank you for the thumbs up, whoever that was. I just kind of wanted to put it out there for the record that for me as an artist, I feel like that there is very, very little crossover between people who listen on Bandcamp and people who listen on Spotify. That's at least how it looks to me, how it comes across to me. And they're two very, very different audiences, and I want to serve them both. I want to have, I want the people who use Spotify and love Spotify to get everything, to get everything that they want from me, and my Bandcamp friends as well. So it's it's just an interesting conversation, isn't it? And I think there's as you say, there's lots of different values around, and there are so many different ways of there were just so many different ways of kind of chiseling path through music as an indie artist at the moment.
Well, do you know, I think there's a bit of a generational thing as well, and that I run a songwriter circle that meets on the first Thursday of every month via Zoom, and the younger members.
It's really lovely.
It's lovely. Yeah, I'm just such a lovely group of people. But there's one songwriter who is a really gifted songwriter and producer, Max Ovenden. Might as well plug him. But he would be possibly younger than my oldest pair of socks. I'm sorry, Mac. That just means my socks are really old. But that generation loves Spotify because that's how they've grown up consuming music, and it's their natural environment. Whereas to those of us who are maybe slightly older, where we used to have to save up our pocket money and go and actually buy a CD, the excitement of wandering around HMV and this kind of thing. But we're just coming from a different generational angle on things, where we didn't just go online and be able to find anything. And so and also because we used to spend, remember CDs used to cost about 15 quid at one point. So we were used to actually spending money. And I think that we are still willing to spend money on music, whereas a younger generation aren't used to that and really aren't, as far as I can tell. So, but also because they are the online tech generation, like that's how they're going to promote their businesses and their work. And they have an understanding for that. So, I find, because obviously I went through a phase of not being terribly fond of Spotify, but I do realize the necessity of being on there, and the certain benefits of it. And just, I like to feel like I'm dealing with like real life human beings, and I just find that easier on other platforms. But
I think that is the difficulty, isn't it? Going back to the I Walk Through Fire debacle.
It was awful.
So yeah, I think one of the things, because like I say, Chris and I produced a track, didn't we? So we were with you while this was happening.
I was freaking out. I think
it was a really difficult rewrite as well, because we all loved the track. It was really, I really don't want to cut this up and change it. It was perfect as it was. I think one of the things that was really, really difficult about that, Spotify, if you're listening, was that you got absolutely no human response at all, did you? Mm-hmm. And that is so difficult when it's, it's a massive professional marker. You were up for this award. It was really, really public. I mean, these things are embarrassing enough when they happen when it's just you and like I've put up tracks before and I've spelt something wrong and then you can't change it, and it's like, it's really embarrassing, but like nobody knows yet. It's okay, but I'm already really like, oh god, I'm so bad.
Yes, I find like it was a black mark against my name, because when the judges for the prize looked at that playlist. My
Just
track was
couldn't have been
grayed
worse, could it really?
out. You know, like there's no explanation about why it's grayed out. You're just excluded. And also it was like having been accused of having done something wrong wasn't very nice. And the fact that when you were messaging Spotify, you were getting sort of auto stop responses. Now, CD Baby, like my distributor, got involved and they would actually communicate with them. But also they were sort of requiring that for the track to go back onto Spotify, it had to, in essence, be a different
A
song.
different track,
You
yeah.
couldn't just stick the same song up again. And that meant remixing something which probably actually didn't need remixed. And so it was like, it was work, it was money, and there was like, it didn't feel like the remix that we did was slightly different. Actually, there was things that we did, like we took the introduction out of it and it just came in with the vocal and stuff, and I actually quite liked that. But I wouldn't have done that hadn't, you know, if it hadn't just been a necessity. And it was the fact, it was actually at the time incredibly stressful. But I was just like a stress puddle on the floor, because it's like I make my living out of my business and pay my bills and support my elderly mother out of my business. And this was putting my business in bad standing with the biggest music streaming platform, the place that most people go to listen to music.
Yeah.
So, like it was,
and that one thing brings all your other stats into question, doesn't it?
Yes.
So people then go over to your YouTube and then think, well, how much of that is real?
Yeah, because it was sort of questioning my integrity in a way. Now, there's one thing we talked about this earlier, you know, before the stream went live, that I would say to anyone who's listening, which is, don't use services that offer to get your tracks placed into playlists or like to up your Spotify streams, because that is really against Spotify's rules and they will take down your track for that. And also all you'll get is bot streams. There are no real people. Like having, you know, 100,000 streams of a song like may feel like it's going to look really cool, but if they're fake, you're not actually really benefiting at all. And the reason that Spotify was taking down tracks at the time was that had been a problem, that people were paying for playlist placement, which is against their rules, and so they were cracking down on that. And I read an article that said they took down 70,000 tracks that year, and mine was one of them. But I just felt this sense of being aggrieved, like there may have been bot plays on the track. I don't honestly know, but if there were, I feel like they didn't come from me. Like it wasn't like I was sitting on my computer just streaming the track 24 hours a day, you know. And so I feel like you didn't really know what had happened and what had got, and that was,
and we couldn't get to the source of the problem either, could we? So we didn't know even whether or not that was why. I think even now to this day, we're just assuming that was what it was. Yeah. We've taken an educated guess, or you've taken an educated guess, and say that this is what happened. But like, there was nobody that you could talk to, and you couldn't even speak to anyone and say. And sometimes I've had this a couple of times on TikTok actually, where one of my videos will get taken down, and they'll say you've breached the community guidelines. I've had actually, no, I'm not going to go there. Facebook and I have fallen out a couple of times as well, where they'll take things down and then it says you breached the community guidelines. I'm like, oh God, what have I done? And then it just says, and then there's nothing. It doesn't actually say specifically what it is. And I always challenge it because I just don't know. Not once have I ever worked out why that's happened. And they just say you've breached the community guidelines. Well, if you tell me what it is I've done, then I won't do it again, because I'm not here deliberately to, you know.
I have never
hard enough, you know, in this. I
follow you on social media, and I have never seen you engage in any behavior that was offensive or intimidating, or, you know, because you think for something to be removed, you'd really need to be attacking someone or using language that was very offensive about certain groups or whatever. But I've never seen anything on your social media that I've thought, oh gosh, I'm reporting that. You know, like you just don't particularly have.
That's just not how I'm. It's like the exact opposite of how I'm wired. I just, you know, it is a frustration, and I think particularly when, you know, with you know, Northern Irish Music Award and all that, you were on a deadline as well, weren't you?
Yes.
I'm just going to mute my mic because I'm going to cough. Sorry.
Oh, you're okay. Yeah, they have this like playlist, and there's a lot, like hundreds of tracks on the playlist, and the judges have got to get through as many as they can. And if yours is not, like, if everybody else's track is listed on a Spotify playlist, but they've got to go off to SoundCloud or somewhere else to play yours, they're not going to do that. They don't have
Yeah.
time. So it was like it just put the kibosh on that. And it, in order to be eligible, it has to have been released within a certain time frame, so that you couldn't sort of try again the next year with the same song, because the time scale would have passed. So it was quite upsetting at the time. I really felt very stressed about it at the time, and the fact that you couldn't get through to an actual human being to find, like, I still, as you say, don't really totally know what happened. Just that a lot of tracks were taken down that year for fake streams and this kind of thing. So I'm assuming that it was something to do with that. There is nothing in the track. It's not an offensive track. It isn't attacking anyone. It's not sweary. Sweary stuff is actually fine on Spotify as long as you mention that it's explicit.
I've noticed so much swearing in pop music recently, as well in recent years. But yeah, it is a mystery. So I suppose to sum up, just to sort of reiterate really to my listeners that for the half a dozen people a week who get offended when talking about Spotify, I just wanted to sort of say to everybody that it's never my intention to cause offense with anything. It's just an invitation to, I thought you might like this, here's an example of my work. And some people come back and say, a lot of people come back and they'll say, I don't use Spotify, but I use Apple Music, so I can just send them a different link, which is all fine. But maybe we could just have a little discussion about the positives of those different platforms. And while I've I've just thought that something else that actually I really like about Spotify, since I've been more, since I've been paying more attention as an artist, is that they have, there's a whole sort of back office for artists, where you can look
for artists.
where you can look at your stats, you can look at your plays, you can see, and there's a whole load of stuff where loads of my stuff has been put on playlists that I wasn't even aware of, and I don't want that to just be passed by without me saying thank you to I do every tiny little thing. I appreciate all of it. And so that was something that's another big plus for me about Spotify over other streaming platforms. I don't even know if that's available with other streaming platforms.
Yeah, they have training videos and things where they talk about sync licensing and branding, and they have all that. You get a little app which looks like the ordinary Spotify app, only it's blue instead of green, and it will give you these kind of things. And it won't show you every playlist you're on. It has to be over a certain number of plays. The only problem is that it'll show you what playlist you're on, but it's nearly impossible to get contact details for playlist creators. So it's hard to kind of like send them a message and go thanks, but you can try. You can look up their name.
I say thank you by sharing the playlist, and if I can find them, if I can find them on Instagram, I share it to my stories and tag them if I can. But that's not always.
It's not always, but you can understand why they do that, because they don't want to be swamped. If they've got quite popular playlists with like 1,000 people a week going, oh, please include my track.
I know music supervisors that say that it's not physically possible to listen to everything that they get sent. That they would just die.
Well, you just
they get sent so much stuff.
Limit the number of people that are sending you stuff. Like, for me, the positives of Spotify, I've genuinely discovered stuff on there that I don't think I would have heard otherwise, where I've made a playlist of my own for like playing in the car, and then when you get to the end of that, it just starts randomly bringing stuff up, like algorithmically, and I have genuinely discovered stuff that way that I really liked.
And that's a great thing about Spotify, that the algorithm is getting really clever at serving individuals their own music tastes, which is great for indie artists.
Well, that's it, because it is actually likely to promote you. But I think there is a way of cracking the algorithm, which I haven't just really studied so much. I mean, I think your best way of getting a lot of plays on Spotify is to get into an editorial playlist. But apparently, there's 40,000 tracks a day uploaded. So the chances of that happening are slim, but you might as well still pitch if you can get into like a really big curated playlist. But playlists seem to be the way to go to really
Yeah.
get attention on Spotify. But I can see why they banned people just paying to be in playlists, because that is just not fair in essence.
Yeah, and it also doesn't guarantee that you're going to get listeners, does it? I mean, if you've paid to be in a playlist, it doesn't mean that the people that follow that playlist are going to.
Well,
so in a way, that is actually protecting artists.
Yeah, in a way. So, like, there's things that they do. I mean, clearly the low level of remuneration leads to the quite obvious charge that they don't care about artists. And so they've had to take steps to say, well, actually, we supply Spotify for artists as a program. We do have certain rules in place to try and protect artists' interests. The people that really get shafted are songwriters, in my humble opinion, because you're just making so little out of it. At least if you're an artist, you're it's helping your profile and stuff, but as a songwriter, but we're talking about positives here. Again, I probably just discovered the work of certain writers and that I wouldn't have without Spotify. I do like, back in the days when I was young, you made mixtapes for your friends and loved ones, like on an actual cassette. Young people, you have no idea how difficult this was. It's lovely.
I was so good at that. I miss it.
But now it's like a present. Like I've definitely like made playlists for friends where there's been tracks I thought they might like, and it's like, here's a little playlist for you. And like, it's lovely being able to do that. And the fact that even when I teach music, where you're able to put all the songs from a certain grid onto a playlist and let a student listen and see which songs stand out to them. Like, the technology of it makes certain things possible in a way that's really easy, where back in the day where you were downloading stuff from iTunes and putting it into playlists, it just was a bit there was a financial cost, but also it was slower, and now you can just like so quickly throw together a playlist. Like, it's amazing. And even though I'm giving off about the loss of the art of the album, I do like playlists. Just
it's the modern mixtape, isn't it? I was thinking, sort of 15 minutes ago when we were talking about, queuing up at HMV and all of that, that when I was first starting out, going around, playing open mics and all of that when I was a kid, I'm so glad this is analog and it's been lost in history, but people would pay a tenner for a cassette tape that I'd played on, and I would copy it and stuff. People would pay £10 for that, and it's probably some of the worst work I ever generated. But it's just, the world changes.
And also, it's very hard. I had some stuff that was very early stuff, and it was up on MySpace back in the day and all. And then I got to the point where I had, changed direction and just learned a bit more about my craft, and I wanted that stuff taken down, and it was really hard. Because like your old embarrassing stuff, you're like, I don't want that out there. It's like, once it goes up, I mean, your distributor, you can ask your distributor to take things down off of Spotify and the likes, but really once it's out there, it's out there. So be very, very sure, is the moral of the story, that something is good to go. Actually, I think when you're like early stage and you're learning your craft and you're just sort of testing the waters, SoundCloud is probably the way to go, because it offers you hosting, and then you can share the stuff in your own social media, get the opinions of people whose opinions you trust before you think of going on to like Apple Music, Spotify. And obviously, to go on Spotify, like, everything has to be broadcast standard. You don't, like, you can't just go and like record something on your phone and stick it onto Spotify. Another big thing, just in case, I'm sure nobody listening has actually done this, but when you go onto YouTube karaoke videos, and they now have this disclaimer saying like, please don't use this backing track and like go on to services like Spotify, like you have to.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Because clearly they're doing that because somebody has actually done this at some point. Everything has to be your own original composition, like be really careful about samples and that kind of thing, because you hope that stuff's going to blow up and some people are actually going to play it. And if it gets like 100,000 streams in a couple of weeks and you've got somebody else's intellectual property in it, like, you're going to be really in trouble.
And it's always the thing that you think, oh, I'm just doing this for a bit of a laugh. It's not, nobody's going to listen to this. And then you think,
See, and that's the thing about the
need to take that sample out.
Well, YouTube has a content ID system where if its algorithm flags that there's something that belongs to somebody else, they actually go to that person and ask for permission. And normally the person will give it. And that's another thing that I like about YouTube. Like, I'm mostly posting my own original compositions, but because occasionally I like to post the odd cover, and it's safe to do that on YouTube. And I find by posting covers and like giving people familiar songs, then they actually they get to know your voice and your style, and they will listen to original stuff. And so
yeah, absolutely,
I can't possibly do that. And so like I made a sort of little pros and cons list. The kind of SWOT analysis thing, because I'm a geek like that, and decided like for my personal business, the way to go was YouTube, which is still quite well respected, because I feel like being able to say that you've had a lot of plays on YouTube is well, the industry tends to look at Spotify, but YouTube is also kind of there.
Yeah.
But it's like I say, it's like looking at your own values and the needs of your own business and what you want to achieve. And then, because there's so many platforms, and whilst you can be on them all, and there's nothing to say that you can't be on Bandcamp and Spotify and like all over the place, we've all only got a limited amount of time in our weeks. And so it's like kind of choosing, well, which one is most significant to me. I think in your case, like Bandcamp, because you want to build that sense of a tribe and a community. And to me, like, Bandcamp is going to offer you some really cool tools for doing that. I like their VIP thing. I think I haven't like totally sussed it yet. But, you were talking about Tudor times. There was a period in history where there was the idea of the patron. And now we have like Patreon, where you can get the people who are really interested to basically support you. And they can do that. It doesn't have to be like a massive cost per month. Like, I pay £6 into my friends every month, and like that is a way to go. But the big question that's coming out of all of this is the real issue is money. And where does money come from now? And I don't think there is actually an easy answer to that, like how to make money out of recordings. Can you even make money out of recordings these days? You might be able to if you've got a major label behind you and like an absolutely huge budget for promotion and stuff. But for us mere mortals, probably not as easy. And this is the dilemma that we're faced with.
Yeah. I got my first proper telling off from a big record label on YouTube years ago, and it was terrifying. Ooh. So I did it, and the funny thing is, it's still one. I think it's either the first or second most popular video on my YouTube channel. So do you remember? I can't remember the name of the pub. There was Mark and Annika Venus. Well, Mark Venus used to run the Candlelight Club in Bristol.
Yes,
I used to love playing in Bristol.
Yeah.
It's the Golden Bell or something.
No, I'm thinking the Fleece. Sorry. No. In Bristol for lack of.
I'm sorry, I can't. Yeah, I played there so many times. I'm sorry, I can't remember it. Is always a really lovely gig, and one of those places where it's just packed full of people who love just music lovers, and it was a really really lovely place. And I had a recording of it was a live clip of me playing Shooting Star with Bob Dylan, and I put it on my YouTube channel, and then I got told off by Columbia Records, and like,
see, usually, maybe like,
and then they said, I think they have this deliberately. The first part of the email is to give you a heart attack, and then after that, they're like, actually, if you just update your description and say this, that, and the other, then that's fine. So that's why I've got this great big thing. And then after it all calmed down, I was like, oh wow, Bob Dylan's record label just emailed me, which is
the fact that you actually did well enough for them to acknowledge your existence. Obviously they scared the living daylights out of you, but afterwards that's quite a cool story. But then you see, because they came up with the content ID system and stuff now, that's great, because it stops people getting those emails where it just like goes to the copyright owner and says, are you happy for this person to use this? And most of the time they say yes. There's like no.
Yeah, they had to come up with technology to deal with that, didn't they? Because it's just not policeable at all.
Not really.
I've find YouTube videos of where people have made stuff with my music just for their own pleasure, and it's like I had no idea that people were using my music for this.
I get that too, when I get my royalty payments in and I can see that it's been used on YouTube. And do you know, though, if the person had asked first, probably would have got chatting to them and we would have had a bit of like, it would have been nice because we would have got to know each other. I have had people use music at funerals, like family funerals and things, and baby namings and stuff. And it's lovely to think that you contributed to like a major moment in someone's life. But it's like, it's the polite thing to do to ask, but it also creates a relationship. And it's nice for us. If you are out there like wanting to use somebody's song for a purpose like that, generally that's the reason that we're making music, is to have that to give to other people. So it's very unlikely the person's going to say no, really. And if they do, they didn't deserve your commitment anyway. Or there's probably some legal reason for it rather than they're just being snippy.
So have we covered all the positives about Bandcamp? So we've got the community thing, and there's a really nice if you do go to people's Bandcamp, what it creates for us as the artist is we get you sort of go into a pool of emails of, these are the people who've listened, or these are the people who've purchased, or these are the people who followed, and then we can send we can contact you and send emails, but you also get notified instantly when anything gets updated to Bandcamp. So when I was doing One Girl, One Guitar, and I was releasing a new single every 2 weeks, everyone who followed it on Bandcamp, because you can't schedule the release date, so it's like once it's there, it's there. So because I wanted it all to be live on the day that it should have been, on the day that it was going to be live everywhere, actually everyone who was on Bandcamp was getting it a few days early. So they were just automatically getting notified that something new had been uploaded. So it's a lovely, it's a very different relationship, I think, on Bandcamp. You've got a much more human connection.
Yes.
Yeah.
And Bandcamp itself, with the Bandcamp Friday and everything, has a much better reputation for being pro artist. And actually being there to serve artists.
I think it's quite a small team as well, isn't it? There have been a couple of times where I've needed tech support or something, and it's not instant, but I did get a human reply from a person with a name.
A person with a name?
A human person with a name. It's amazing. Oh my god.
Yeah, we are now entering into the world of AI and stuff, and so it's so exciting whenever you think, I think I might be talking to someone real here.
Yeah, and when you have got a problem with something like, number of times I've said to people like, I'm a singer, I don't understand all this technical stuff, I've had to learn, like we've all had to, but it's I didn't come into this because I'm an incredibly skilled web developer. I'm like, I don't know, I pressed a button and it didn't do what I thought it was going to do, and all of that. That it is really amazing to have people there who understand that and are able to help
for you. Yeah.
So, well, there we go. Apart from the 45 minutes that we were talking before we went live, we've still managed to talk about it for another 50 minutes. So thanks everyone who's tuned in. If you're watching this on YouTube, do like and subscribe and comment, and let us know what you think, and same on Facebook. And if you're watching on Twitter, just give us a pop and say hi. We're human people with names, and we're happy to chat and all that sort of thing. So Eve and I will probably be back talking about maybe other issues for artists and just general gas and all that kind of thing, but I'll just I'll say goodbye now. So Eve is evewilliamsmusic.com if you want to check out Eve's website. and you're already here if you're watching me. So thanks very much, everybody. It's been really good fun. Go listen to some music on your preferred platform.
Thanks,
and
Dielle.
big love to everyone. Thanks, Eve. It's always good to put the world to rights with you.
Lovely to see you.
Lovely to see you. Take care, everyone. Bye. Bye.